You're listening to the B2B Roundtable. I'm your host, Brian Carroll, and we're going to be talking about something that affects all of us in marketing. So our customers care more about the values of the companies they buy from than ever before. It's more than your purpose. It's more than what you sell. They want to know what kind of company you are and what do you care about. Does a company want to do more than just drive profits? So that's why I interviewed Dr. Philip Kotler, who's known as the father of modern marketing. He's the S.C. Johnson and Son Distinguished Professor of International Marketing at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and he's co-author of the book Brand Activism: From Purpose to Action. Well, we're really excited to have you on the show today, and we're going to talk about brand activism. So what is brand activism?
Brand activism, Brian, is a movement toward making a brand do more than just tout the virtues of a product or a service, its usual function, and to go and even identify some value or values that the company has and cares about. For example, the Body Shop, when it started out under Anita Roddick, she made it her point that she's not only selling skincare products as a retailer, but she really was also fighting for animal rights, civil rights, fair trade, environmental protection. So her brand was an active brand. Now, I don't mean that all other brands are passive, because they do a lot of work, but the implication is that companies carry reputations, and they want to carry a good reputation. More and more consumers would like to know what kind of company is this, what does it care about, because our society is saddled with a lot of problems. And does the company care about any of these problems, or does it just think it's supposed to make money? An increasing number of companies would like an identity that goes beyond just making the product or service. And that is what we are calling brand activism, the brand that actually connects with some cause or maybe several causes.
Well, it's really helpful distinction, and you recently wrote a book on this topic. I'd love to hear the story behind why you wrote the book Brand Activism, and why now?
I think that if you look at some barometers like the Edelman Trust Barometer about the level of trust in society today, it's certainly been falling.
Yes.
And as a result, many companies are not going to be trusted either, as part of maybe government not being trusted and other institutions. And companies ought to be the first to fight against bad companies rather than stand near them or be part of bad companies. So the idea is that at this time, companies want to be profiled in a certain way. In other words, the reputation a company has could be just whatever happens in its course of behavior, or it could also be something that is to be designed better, consciously better. And you see, the whole idea of a brand itself has gone through several stages, and that's very important. And I think brand activism is probably the highest stage, but let me tell you what the stages are in my mind.
That would be great.
Yes, the first stage is when the company simply does its best to feature the good side of its product and services. Now that's normal. That was an identifier. Then brands moved into trying to define the company's positioning, but not social positioning, just their positioning, like Walmart is lowest price, and Disney is family entertainment, DuPont is highest quality, and Toyota, long-lasting, reliable performance. So in that second stage, the brand became not just one mentioning a product, but it was positioning the product. Then the brand moved further to define perhaps a set of qualities about the company. Let me take as an example John Deere, which makes all kinds of equipment for farmers and for forestry workers and for construction workers. You would say that at this stage, John Deere would describe itself for its quality, its integrity, and its innovation. It would like to be, it's really positioning, but it's multi-positioning, namely saying that it stands high on a number of traits that are valued by most people. But this could move into a fourth stage where the brand actually adopts a very specific cause. You know about customer social responsibility, and a lot of companies are into that. So a company may say that it really cares about the climate problem and wants to help move solutions toward keeping a good climate in the world. Or it could be some other cause. And then brand activism is allied with that development of going from customer social responsibility to the company actually saying, here's one of the things we're going to move forward on to the extent that we can afford to do it. We want to make good products, make money doing that, but we also want to push forth some cause that would help. So that's the evolution of branding, and brand activism is at one of its latest stages.
Well, it's interesting as I'm listening to you, as you talked about just the drivers that have been, some of them have been, consumer expectations and our trust that we have towards institutions has fallen. But what has really been driving brand activism, and how have you seen, or from what your research has shown, have customers changed their expectations?
Well, I think if customers were asked how they feel about the economy and society, we would hear them talk about concerns and fears related to immigration, related to a decline in ethics, problem of gun control, a very high federal budget, very high debt, and education failing. Many people, either they never got a good education in a country that should be rich enough to give a good education to everyone, or the college education, whatever it was worth, and saddled them with a lot of debt. So there's all these social issues, and they become the ground out of which brand activism gets important. We would say that companies do not have the right to be silent about these issues. There are an increasing number of people who would argue that companies owe it to their consumers to show that they care for more than just their product and making money. And that's the groundwork that inspired brand activism.
As I listen to you, it sounds like all these things that externally happened in the world around us, which affects our daily life, is influencing brands to pick up some of the slack in terms of being able to connect with customers. Do you see a difference between B2B companies and B2C companies with brand activism?
No, I don't see a difference. I think both types of companies will want their reputation to go beyond just making their product as well as possible. That if you take equipment companies like John Deere, if you take consumer companies like McDonald's or Coca-Cola, any one of them, in fact, I'd say that if you start doing a count of the companies that have made their brand more active in that sense, that there'd be a lot of B2B and a lot of B2C companies in that list of brand active companies.
I was just trying to think, some of the brands that come to mind for me would be like Nike or Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, Starbucks are pretty acknowledged, and I know that you've highlighted them in terms of consumer brands. Do you have any names of like B2B examples that people could look to? Because I think and it could just be for me, I was thinking perhaps Salesforce.com or Apple. Anyone else?
Well, yeah, by the way, I'm glad you did mention Salesforce.com because its leader is one of the pioneers in this area. That's Mark Benioff. And as CEO, he says that he wishes his, his and other companies were, not companies, but personally, that wealthy people would accept to pay a higher tax because that's the only way in which we can address some of these growing problems. So he is very upset with homelessness in Seattle, which is increasing. I know it's not Seattle; it's actually San Francisco, and also the affordable housing, which is missing. So he personally told other very large companies in San Francisco to pool their money in a fund that could be used to double the budget for the people fighting homelessness in San Francisco. So that kind of thing comes from a company which is a B2B company. And I would think that B2B companies have been generally slower as marketers to begin with, because most of what we know about modern marketing, as opposed to just sales training and thinking, came from the consumer side. It was P&G and Unilever and companies like that that created a difference between the concept of sales and the concept of marketing. A
Yeah.
company might say, I do marketing because I have a sales force and I advertise. Okay, that's not marketing. That's just having two resources that could be used within the framework of marketing, but it is not going to be equivalent to creating a really sound and effective total strategy that will keep a firm alive and well for years and years to come. So marketing is more than just sales. Now, that concept of marketing came to the B2B world later than it came to the B2C world, for not any particular reason that I can think of. But then B2B discovered marketing and do more with it now. And I think they will do more with brand activism. Remember, B2B companies are very close to their customers. Consumer companies don't even know that much about individual customers. They can learn a lot now, more and more than ever. But B2B companies know through their sales force every buyer and what he or she is like. And maybe they don't think their values have to be done through brand activism. Pretty much any business buying from another business knows a lot about the values of the seller. That's why they're buying from that seller.
Right.
There's less need for the B2B companies to get into brand activism because it's happening anyways.
Brand activism, though, it's not a marketing thing, right? In terms of it goes deeper into the business strategy and purpose. Am I understanding that?
Oh, absolutely. No marketing CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, is going to take the brand that he is responsible for protecting and enhancing and suddenly move into brand activism on his own or her own. That is a decision that is corporate level. No one plays around with choosing an issue like gun control or the environment or our overcrowded penitentiaries or anything like that and just does it through the marketing department. So this is part of the designing and protecting of the firm's reputation and meaning. It's a good question. You know, we often see the word purpose coming up now in the literature. What is your purpose as a company? Well, I make cars. No, that's fine, but fundamentally, what are you contributing? How are you justifying your company in terms of making life better in society? Brand activism has to come down from the top and be participated in discussions at several levels of the company. By the way, one of the benefits of being brand active is that your employees may be turned on more to the company and its contributions. They can be very proud of their company because it cares about more than just making widgets. So that's probably a motivation for the CEO and the executive suite people to say, maybe we really want to get into choosing our values carefully and putting them into our brand framework, because it will help not only those customers we now have, but to attract more customers and also to excite our own employees about our purpose.
I get that marketers can't do this on their own. It really needs to be a top down from the CEO, the board, looking at the whole executive team. So what can marketers do? Are there things they can do to support brand activism? And I know you put together a framework. I don't know if this would be a good time to talk about that.
Well, if the impulse is going to come from the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, here's what can be done. Let's say you're in a company that is not doing brand activism. There's no display of their values or their issues they care about. Okay. The CMO probably is, if he gets interested at all, it's because he or she or the department is talking about, hey, wouldn't it help if we start worrying about the future of water and whether there'll be enough to make our Coca-Cola? The water problem will be a very big issue in the future. And there's agreement with the marketing group that maybe they should bring that to the executive suite, putting into their brand work some mention of the intense interest in doing what can be done to conserve water and protect good water and so on and so forth. And so it is possible that the senior management is stimulated initially by someone in group in marketing that sees that it would be a good move to refresh the brand. Every brand gets tired over time. One of the key requirements of a brand of the CMO is to be able to kick that old view of the brand and put in some fresh insight and meaning. And one could come through brand activism. It could come in different forms too without brand activism. So the brand manager who begins to care a lot doesn't have to be quiet about it and may be successful in getting the company at the top level to endorse this thing. As long as the CMO can research any issues that might arise or embarrass the company in taking that cause, and that means if there's any level of real risk, probably brand activism won't be adopted. But I really believe that brand activism is something to be brought to the attention of the senior management of a company by the CMO or whatever way it happens to consider taking some action on that.
As I'm listening to you, I hear the idea that marketers really need to start with a plan. And as I understand, you put together a framework so that people can put brand activism into their organization. If this is something that they want to do, there's a framework that you developed. And we'll give our listeners an opportunity to learn more about that in our show notes and the links. But can you describe a little bit about what the framework is you put together for brand activism?
Yeah, well, the first need was to describe the different types of brand activism that may be chosen by a company. The types that we distinguished are, first, could be social activism. That would mean taking a stand on gender or LGBT or on race problems or aging problems, education or healthcare. So that would be to identify your company as being concerned about the social side and social problems. The second would be workplace activism. Instead, the company might want to address issues of corporate organization, CEO pay, worker compensation, or labor and union relations, and things like that. So the brand may really be addressing workplace issues. The third possibility is the brand addresses political issues. So we call that political activism, sort of complaining about lobbying or private or voter rights or gerrymandering, problems of actually voting. That may be the form that a company adopts. Or the fourth form might be environmental activism, where there's concern about air and water pollution and emissions, conservation. The fifth would be economic activism, where the company takes a stand on wage and tax policies that impact on income inequality and even on the redistribution of wealth or something like that. Finally, in the framework, we say, or you may go toward legal activism and talk about policies that impact corporations, such as the tax policies or citizenship policies or employment laws. So that's the framework. And we provide a system of maps and canvases and scoring systems that could help a company that gets serious about adopting brand activism. By a scoring system, it would be a system to see how the company is seen before it went into brand activism, what it expected to accomplish in the minds of its customers and the public about being active in that set of issues, and what is their score? How impactful has been their adoption of that issue, and on what? On sales growth, on profit levels, market share, and so on and so forth. So we do need some scoring system to know if we should increase our brand activism on that issue or just stay where we are, or actually if it's not working for us at all.
The thing that I'm hearing is that we need to decide what our purpose is, or what's our reason for being beyond money. And that's part of the purpose, the overarching goal. And from there, then the framework helps me show where I am at and today and how I can improve. How do you see empathy fitting into this for the customer? And, from a customer standpoint, this can feel like companies are, I've heard some critique for women's issues. Companies pink it up, meaning they put pink on things for women's issues, but it's really not authentic. And we've seen some other brands do that. So do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, we're concerned about authenticity, and that adopting an interest in promoting an issue, that's a real issue, can't get lost in what we might call a very superficial talk by the company on occasion about mentioning the issue, and that there's no real serious commitment. It's like we would say to the company, you're active about being against pollution. What have you done with that position? The only thing you've done is talked against pollution, but no action. Then we're not as impressed with that. There's a term, you may remember it, green grassing or something. It's about appearing to be a green company, but just through talk and not doing much about it. But I believe that in the end, there would be researching customers. You hope to find that a lot of customers, when they're asked about this company, don't just mention its products, but do you know that whether company X cares about some social issue? And if after you, as a company, did a lot of brand activism, you find out that hardly any customer of yours noticed that you took a stand on that issue, then it's not working. Probably because you're just talking it up and not committing. So we need a scoring kind of thing. But when it works well, we believe it enhances the value of the firm in the minds of not only existing customers and the employees, but potential customers. It may even be a entry point that discussing pollution opens up your company to a lot of people who don't know much about your company, but they know a lot about pollution, and they're happy to see another ally in the fight against pollution. The word empathy is suggesting that will customers really be empathic with the company, feeling that the company is sincere and caring in a deep way about that issue, or will they be not believing that it's very real?
Excellent. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your day just to share with us about this, the notion of brand activism, how it's impacting, how we can employ it, why it matters. What's the best way for readers and listeners to find out more about your book and brand activism?
Well, our book is listed on the Amazon books list and against either my colleague's name, which is Christian Sakar, or my name, Philip Kotler. So brand activism would be identified that way. But otherwise, they could write to us if they needed more information. We have a thing called the Marketing Journal. It's available to anyone to look up, and there's no cost to going to the Marketing Journal. It's not to be confused with the Journal of Marketing or anything like that. It's the marketingjournal.com. Follow more on brand activism.
Well, wonderful. Thank you again. We'll put those links that you shared for our listeners, and you'll find those in the show notes. And Dr. Kotler, thank you again for joining us today. So excited to talk with you and learn about this.
Well, thank you very much for your excellent questions, Brian, and good luck with your very important show.